I'll be honest with you. I thought this delivery was going to be my last. It was supposed to be routine. Just another DoorDash run across town. But the whole time I was walking up that driveway, I couldn't stop noticing the paper bag in my hand. The bottom was slick with grease, bleeding through from the burgers inside. The smell of onions and fried meat stuck to my fingers. The house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac with no streetlights. Just 3 homes total, each porch light dim, like they were barely alive against the dark. I kept tightening my grip on the bag, listening to it crinkle with every step. When the door opened, the man didn't reach for the food. He just stared at me, smiled in this way that told me something was wrong, and said, "Come inside." I told him no. I just needed him to take the bag, but his tone sharpened. "No. Come in. I've got something for you." And in that second, I knew this wasn't going to end at the doorstep. This account has been cross-referenced with hospital intake logs and county police records dated November 17th, 2019, Clark County, Nevada. Certain personal details have been removed or altered for privacy. For about 2 months, I was working weekends as a delivery driver. Nothing serious. Just DoorDash runs to make extra money. The suburbs around Vegas are usually easy. Fast pickups, quick drop-offs, a couple bucks in tips. That night had already gone wrong before I even pulled into the cul-de-sac. A cop lit me up on the way there, blue and red flashing in my rearview mirror. I pulled over, handed him my license, sat there sweating while my clock ticked down on the delivery timer. He wrote me a ticket that cost more than I could make in a week of runs. I remember thinking the whole night was already lost. And then I still had to finish the delivery. I drove straight from that traffic stop into the cul-de-sac. It wasn't like any other street I'd been down. Completely dark. No streetlights listed on the city's public works map. Just 3 houses, sitting there in silence, like they were waiting for something. I grabbed the paper bag from the passenger seat. It left grease spots on my jeans when I pressed it against my leg. My stomach was tight the whole way up the driveway. When I knocked, there was no doorbell. Just the hollow sound of my fist against wood, the bag crinkling in my other hand. The man opened the door. He didn't look at the food. He looked at me. And when he told me to come inside, the bag suddenly felt a lot heavier. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Stale beer, sour smoke, something rotten in the sink. His kitchen table was covered with unopened mail, sticky bottles, and crumbs that clung to my sleeve when I set the bag down. The man didn't take the food. He mumbled something about needing cash, then disappeared behind a door that led down to the basement. I heard his footsteps creak, fade, then vanish into the dark. I stood there, alone, staring at that paper bag on the table. The grease had bled into a circle at the bottom, spreading wider by the minute. I thought about leaving. I thought about grabbing it back and just walking out. Then came the crash. Metal, wood, something heavy falling over, followed by a muffled cry for help. It sounded desperate, real. I hesitated, hand on the doorknob at the top of the basement steps. I even pulled out my phone, thinking about calling 911. But when I checked later, I found out something that still chills me. There was no record of any emergency calls made from that address. Not that night. Not ever. The bag was still sitting there untouched, while the man's voice floated up from the blackness below. "Help," he moaned. My thumb hovered over the flashlight on my phone, and I started walking down. Halfway down the stairs, I stopped. The moaning had gone silent. The air below me felt heavier, thick, like the dark itself was pressing upward. I held my phone out, the beam cutting through the dust. Every step groaned under my weight. The smell of damp concrete, mixed with whatever grease was still clinging to my fingers from that bag upstairs. Then I heard it. Just the tiniest sound, like gravel crushed under a boot. Too close, right at the bottom of the stairs. My chest tightened. I gripped the banister with one hand, my phone with the other. And then, a knock at the front door. Hard, sharp, almost angry. I spun around and bolted up the steps. When I opened the door, it was the same cop who had pulled me over not 10 minutes earlier. He was holding 2 folded sheets of paper, clipped together. My ticket. Before I could explain, I blurted out what I'd heard. The crash. The cry for help. The silence after. The cop glanced past me into the house, one hand resting near his holster. He told me there had been strange calls in this area before, reports that went nowhere. No official complaints. Nothing filed. Just whispers on dispatch logs. The bag of food was still sitting on the table. The grease spot wider now, almost black. The cop asked me to stay by the door as he drew his flashlight, and then he started down into the dark. I waited at the top of the stairs, listening. The cop's boots hit each step with a slow rhythm, his flashlight beam bouncing against the walls until it disappeared into the black. Then came the shouting, his voice echoing off concrete, ordering someone to stop. The crash of movement below, too fast, too heavy, like furniture being shoved. A gunshot split the silence, the kind that empties your head for a full second afterward. I froze, gripping the paper bag against my chest like it could shield me. It was warm now, slick from the grease. I could hear coughing, footsteps on the stairs. The cop emerged, dragging the man up with one arm. His face was twisted in pain, blood soaking his shirt where the bullet had caught him. The cop barked at me to move, to hold the door as he pulled the suspect outside. I stood on the porch with the bag pressed to my chest, watching the ambulance lights cut through the cul-de-sac that had been so dark minutes earlier. Later, I would read the hospital report myself. Male patient admitted with 2 gunshot wounds. Name withheld. Condition critical. And all I could think about was how I'd walked into that house for the promise of a $5 cash tip. I can still hear the bag crinkling when I squeezed it too hard. I can still feel the grease on my fingers. So, I'll ask you, if it were you at that doorstep, would you have stepped inside? I used to tell myself I liked doing late-night runs. Less traffic, faster rides. That night, though, I was carrying a bag of Mexican food balanced in one hand and my motorcycle helmet in the other. And all I could think about was how stupid I was for saying yes to this order. The helmet felt heavier than usual, still warm from the ride, the chin strap swinging as I walked up the wrong driveway. The app said, house number 15. The mailbox said the same. But the woman who opened the door looked at me like I was insane. "No Ronnie here," she told me. She was older, firm, not confused, just certain. I apologized, turned back to my bike, checked the app again. Same address, same number, same street. And when I tried calling the customer, he told me he wasn't at the house at all. He was chilling with a friend across the road, in the preserve, by a fire. That was when I should have canceled, but I didn't. This account has been cross-referenced with records from the Nevada Division of State Parks. On the night in question, no after-hours entry permits were logged for the area known as Redstone Preserve. I'd been using my bike for deliveries for a while. Quicker than a car. Easier to weave through late-night traffic. A 15-minute ride could drop down to 10 if I pushed it. And those few minutes made a difference when you stacked orders. The helmet always came with me, though. I never left it on the seat. Too easy for someone to swipe. So I carried it under my arm, the visor catching reflections from passing headlights, the strap hitting against my jacket as I walked. That night, The customer on the phone, Ronnie, or at least that's what he called himself, told me to meet him inside the preserve across from the house listed on the app. He even sounded casual about it, like it was no big deal. "Just by the fire," he said. I asked why he didn't just give me the right address. He laughed, promised a big tip, and that was that. Across the street, I noticed a break in the fence, a narrow opening in the chain link, like someone had cut it years ago. No sign, no official gate, just enough space to slip through. I stepped in, helmet still tucked under my arm, and followed the dirt trail. The glow from the street lamps behind me started to fade. Every step deeper felt wrong, like I was walking out of the world I knew and into something I wasn't supposed to see. And ahead of me, just barely flickering between the trees, I saw it. The orange light of a fire. The fire was real. Orange flames licking up into the night, sparks drifting like fireflies. But what caught me off guard was how quiet it all was. No voices, no laughter, not even footsteps. I kept the helmet tucked under my arm, my hand squeezing the chin strap so tight it left a line on my palm. My other hand carried the delivery bag, the plastic containers shifting inside with every step. "Ronnie?" I called out. My voice felt too loud in the trees. No answer. Closer now, I could see a tent pitched just behind the fire, zipped shut, dark. I raised my voice again, asked if this was the right spot. Nothing. The only sound was the pop of burning wood. Finally, I crouched and tapped on the tent. "Ronnie?" Food delivery. From inside, I saw movement. A shape rolling onto its stomach, legs stretching toward the flap. Shoes inches from where my face was. Still no words. No acknowledgement. The helmet slipped a little under my arm, and I clutched it tighter, suddenly aware of how exposed I was. My bike was out of sight. The street lamps were gone. There was only me, the bag of food cooling in my hand, and someone, or something, inside that tent refusing to speak. That's when I realized the fire wasn't for warmth. It was bait. I straightened up, ready to just leave it all. The bag, the order, the tip. But before I could turn, I felt it. Hands, cold, sudden, gripping both my ankles from inside the tent. Fingers clawing, pulling me down toward the flap. I dropped the bag. Containers burst open, the smell of rice and salsa spilling into the dirt. My helmet nearly slipped from under my arm, but I clutched it tight, raising it like I could swing it if I had to. And then I saw him. A man standing 20 feet away, just beyond the firelight. Between two trees, motionless, watching me. His voice came low, steady. "Are you alone?" My throat went dry. I forced out a lie. Said I wasn't, that my partner was close by. He tilted his head, stepped closer. "Where's my food?" The hands on my legs tightened. I yanked free, stumbled backward, holding the helmet in front of me like a shield. The man by the trees started moving fast now, charging. I didn't wait to see how close he'd get. I bolted, helmet banging against my ribs as I ran, dirt kicking up under my boots, the faint glow of the street lamps finally bleeding back into sight. Behind me, the fire still burned. But no one called my name this time. I didn't look back until I was at the bike. My hands shook so badly I fumbled the key twice before it caught. I shoved the helmet on, the strap loose under my chin, my breath fogging the visor. The headlight cut across the empty street, and for just a second, I thought I saw someone slip back into the shadows near the preserve's entrance. But I didn't stop to check. I rode until the firelight was gone, until the houses came back, until the noise of my own engine drowned out the pounding in my chest. Later, I found myself searching for records. I wanted proof that I hadn't imagined it, that there really had been people out there that night. What I found instead was a gap. According to the Nevada Division of State Parks, no after-hours entry permits were logged for Redstone Preserve on that date. No official record of anyone being inside. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt on my legs, pulling me down. And every time I pick up my helmet now, every time I feel the strap slip against my fingers, I remember how close I came to being dragged into that tent. So I'll ask you, would you have followed the firelight? I never thought I'd be afraid of looking out my own window. But the night I ordered Chinese through Postmates, I learned what it feels like to have someone outside watching you, and to know they weren't supposed to be there. I remember pacing in my living room, the TV running low, waiting way too long for the food. The curtains by the front window hung heavy, just barely moving in the draft. I kept glancing at them, like maybe the driver was already pulling up. When my phone rang, I felt relief. Finally. But the voice on the other end didn't sound like a delivery driver. He sounded wrong. Slow. Careful. He told me he was outside. I pulled the curtain back just an inch, just enough to check. There was no one there. Just the dark street. But then, he said it. I see you. That was when I realized whoever was on the phone wasn't delivering my food. He was watching me. This account has been cross-referenced with a 911 call log from Clark County Dispatch, dated March 3rd, 2020. The caller reported a suspected prowler matching the description provided in this story. I had just gotten off a late shift, too tired to cook, too hungry to wait until morning. Postmates was the easy option. I'd used it a dozen times before without a single problem. The app said 30 minutes. At the 45-minute mark, I started pacing. I called the driver once, and when he picked up, there was this long pause before he even answered. I had to say my name twice before he finally muttered, "Yeah, I'm on my way." I tried to shake it off. Delivery drivers get lost all the time, but something about his tone didn't sit right. The curtains in the living room were half drawn. I caught myself peeking through them more than once, expecting headlights to pull in. Every time, it was just the same empty street, the same glow from the neighbor's porch. When the phone rang again, I thought maybe he was close. Maybe he needed help finding the house. Instead, his words were slow, deliberate. "Come outside and get your food." I pulled the curtain aside another inch. Nothing. No car, no driver, no bag of food. Just the quiet street, staring back. And then his voice in my ear. "I see you." The fabric slipped from my hand, the curtain swinging shut between me and the night. I hung up without saying anything else. My hands were shaking too much to type, so I just opened the app. It showed my order as delivered. No knock, no food, nothing. I walked from window to window, pulling the curtains just enough to peek through. The dining room, empty. The kitchen, dark yard. Finally, the den, where the back curtain had been drawn all day. I reached for the string and lifted it just an inch, just enough to see under. And that's when I froze. There was a man sitting on my patio chair, not on his phone, not eating, not moving. Just sitting there, his head tilted toward the house, waiting. The curtain slipped from my fingers and dropped shut. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Same number, same voice when I answered. "I just saw you at the window." I told him I was calling the cops and hung up. Later, I would learn something that made it worse. According to the 911 dispatch log from that night, no delivery driver ever called in about a mix-up, a lost order, or a wrong address. There was only my call, reporting a man I hadn't even seen on the street, but sitting in my backyard. And the curtains were the only thing left between us. The waiting was the worst part. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, every vibration making my chest jump. He kept calling, over and over until I silenced the ringer. But I knew he was still out there. Every curtain in the house was drawn now, the fabric feeling thinner than it ever had before. I tried not to look, but I couldn't help imagining him standing just inches away, breathing against the glass. Then came the knock. Hard, deliberate. "Police!" a voice shouted. I ran to the door, stupidly relieved, until I saw him. Not a uniform, no badge. Just a man in dirty street clothes, smiling at me through the storm door. When our eyes met, he pushed against it, trying to force his way inside. I threw my weight into it, slammed it shut, locked it. My heart was pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. He didn't yell. He didn't hit the door again. He just left. At least, that's what I thought. The curtains stayed closed. I didn't dare check. Minutes later, real flashing lights filled the street. Red and blue this time. Unmistakable. 2 officers searched the yard with me, sweeping their beams across the patio. That's when they found it. A phone left on the table outside. The wallpaper showed a white guy smiling with his girlfriend. But the man I'd seen at my door wasn't him. He was older, darker, someone else entirely. The officers logged it, bagged it, and took my statement. I asked if they'd gotten other calls like mine. One of them glanced down at his notes and shook his head. The 911 call log from that night shows only one thing. My voice reporting a prowler, describing a man who vanished before the cops ever got here. The food I had ordered never came. The driver on the app never answered again. And the curtains in my den have stayed shut ever since. Even now, when I reach to pull them open, I can still feel that moment. The weight of the fabric in my hand, the cold certainty that someone was already watching. So let me ask you, would you have looked out the window?